Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac podcast. I am your co-host, Adam. How are you, my dear?
It's Friday.
That's right. We did it.
I got my kid to school on time. I am so
Yay.
done with this school year. There's one more week
Mhm.
and a half,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure what they're doing those 2.5 days. Probably
Not much.
nothing, but yeah, she's done with her testing, I think, after today. It's just exhausting. Like, 3rd grade should not be this exhausting. Shouldn't be this exhausting.
It's more exhausting for you than it is for her.
I mean, it's exhausting for her too, but now she's on like some
Yeah.
medication to help her sleep too, because she's actually sleeping at night instead of running back and forth.
That's
She does
true.
that, and she does things. She does taekwondo. She gets energy out other ways, but
Yes.
we have her in as much as we can have her in, but she is
Mhm.
just hyper in the middle of the night.
I played with her outside, solid 30, 45 minutes. We
Mhm.
were, bouncing around the yard playing Animal Hospital, and she was using her stuffed animals as the patients. And one of her patients had an infection. I said, "Oh, you're going to give them antibiotics to deal with that infection?" She said, "Yes."
Smart. Must be
So,
bacterial. So,
my question exactly. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me. My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I had walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that, as a result of being in a cult or a high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign up and get 10% off your first month of therapy. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping for the old podcast here. Be sure to follow us on whatever platform you are listening or watching on. We have expanded to video, so you're going to see us on Spotify. You're also going to start seeing us on the dedicated podcast YouTube soon. Full episodes on there, and also all the short clips we get from our episodes. Thank you in advance for leaving 5-star reviews. I'm seeing a ton of those on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you all so much for that. That functions like a digital tip jar that pushes the podcast further into the algorithms and toward the ears of other listeners like yourself. Be sure to follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes for all that. If you're listening on your mobile device, screenshot it and then post it to your socials, and then tag us in that post. We'd love to reshare that and interact with all of you online. We have a Patreon that's up and running. Link in the show notes to join that. Let us know what you'd like to see as far as content on there. We are considering offering a second tier to the Patreon, which will include more perks, including monthly live streams, possibly a private Discord. And am I leaving something out?
how you gonna put me on the spot like that? I was literally daydreaming.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
It'll come to me.
Okay. Just whenever you think of it, you just throw it in. But all the current paid patrons have perks right now, which include weekly bonus episodes that my lovely wife produces, the option of leaving us a voicemail that we will listen to here on the podcast and react to. And also you get shouted out by name on the podcast. And those people are as follows: 87 Pens Girl 71, Mara Santiago, Kate the Fairy, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shetreat, Jay Went, Inken Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B., Woolly Wolf NZ, Mama G, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Showstock, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knittin Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, Terrorsaurus Hex, T-Bug, Christine Muljotti, Morgan Brittingham, Blaufrosch, a.k.a. Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Macaulay Sterling, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena MK, Vilma Anderson, Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minnesota SPT. Congratulations on finishing your exams, by the way. Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Prem Risen, Simone Valdez, Christian Scradergard, Maria Anna, Bonnie, Oma D, Rhinella Lara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Sometimes Jules, Mr. Slave, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Caitlin, Ron Mack, and last but not least, Donna Lanzanese, who I will refer to as Donna Take It Easy from here on out.
I need to. Next week I should read them. See what I can do.
Oh, that would be fun.
You do it so rhythmically.
We should try that.
I'm just gonna dance with it. Be cool.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we're adding a new segment. Kind of, I guess, 2 new segments today. We've got a new segment called Poison in the News.
Oh,
And you're
taking
let me
this one, right?
share the screen here.
I'm gonna be amazed because technology. I'm just like, you can do that.
Okay, so this was from the Associated Press back in March 15th. This showed up, and I immediately thought of our podcast listeners because we have covered poisons basically killing rivers. The headline reads: a river died overnight in Zambia after an acidic waste spill at a Chinese-owned mine. The Chinese have a massive mining presence in the country of Africa. And this was this is a real big disaster.
Copper mining.
Yes, it is a copper mine. And I think we discussed a mine like this in Spain, was it? Was that a sulfur mine? Or
that one was owned by, I think, Australia and maybe the British? Something like that. Rio Tinto.
Yeah. Authorities and environmentalists in Zambia fear the long-term impact of an acid spill at a Chinese-owned mine that contaminated a major river and could potentially affect millions of people after signs of pollution were detected at least 100 kilometers or 60 miles downstream. The spill occurred on February 18th when what is called a tailings dam. I'm not sure what a tailings dam is, but it's a dam that broke.
It's a
What's
dam where they keep all the waste, mining waste.
That makes sense. A tailings dam that holds acidic waste from a copper mine in the north of the country collapsed, according to investigators from the Energy Institution of Zambia. The collapse allowed some 50 million liters of waste containing concentrated acid, dissolved solids, and heavy metals to flow into a stream that links to the Kefu River, Zambia's most important waterway. So an equivalent of this happening in the U.S. would be if a tributary to the Mississippi River were to have a tailings dam break and then contaminate the Mississippi. So this is wild.
Mississippi's a gross river anyway, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Authorities are concerned that groundwater will be contaminated as the mining waste seeps into the earth or is carried to other areas. Prior to the 18th of February, this was a vibrant and alive river, said Sean Cornelius, who lives near the Kaifu, and said fish died and bird life near him disappeared almost immediately.
Yeah.
Now everything is dead. It's like a totally dead river. Unbelievable. Overnight, this river died. About 60% of Zambia's 20 million people live in the Kaifu River Basin and depend on it in some way as a source of fishing, irrigation for agriculture, and water for industry.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I mean, it's a big deal. I think I can play this, if I can play this video from the top. I don't think we'll be able to hear any audio. Oh, we can. Well, we can hear it. I don't think the viewers can.
Huh. Yeah, it doesn't take much.
She just said from, all the time they fish there, and she said, but this morning there's zero fish. We're catching nothing.
Surprised they're not just floating on top, to be honest. Yeah, they're.
I think there's a shot of that happening actually.
Yeah.
And this woman that's approaching the riverbank, she is a farmer herself, and she's explaining to the camera and the press that the river's contaminated. When I went to the fish pond, I found a line had flowed through the pond and all the fish had been swept away. And this gentleman is a retired person who lives in Zambia, and he's got a South African accent, so it sounds like he's originally from South Africa. But he's describing the river, that it was vibrant, all kinds of fishing going on. Now the fish have completely disappeared. So
yeah, it doesn't take much for if that environment changes even a little bit, the fish can die. Then the birds who eat the fish die or are gone. And then, of course, the water is contaminated. So your crops will be contaminated if you're using that water to water crops.
Mm-hmm.
So, drinking water, bathing water. Yeah.
But yes, a river died overnight. And that was the headline that caught my attention because we talked about that in previous episodes.
That unfortunately happens way too often. So, and it ruins not just the river, but the life around it and around it, because there are people who do rely on these rivers for sustenance, their way of life, that kind of thing. And we're going to do more episodes on more rivers that have ended up, unfortunately, like this one. And the thing is, there's no telling if there's even plans to clean up this area. I don't even know if it mentioned that or not, but that's going to take money, time, a lot of effort, especially with the heavy metals, because once they get into that sediment, it's hard to sort of get those heavy metals out, and they can last a long time. So now you've got kids that may be drinking that water that now are going to be having lead poisoning and all kinds of crazy issues.
And of course, I wonder, what the private sector that's involved, the Chinese ownership of that mine, what could they actually approach them and negotiate with them to contribute to the cleanup, or will they just close it and leave town?
I think it depends, because I know with the Rio Tinto group, they've been held accountable in some ways. I mean, they've, I think they've lengthened quite a few of their trials and stuff on purpose, probably, and they had those people sign those, don't, let's not talk about this. We'll pay for some stuff for you, but don't talk about this. So, yeah. It just
NDAs? Is that what they gave them?
Yeah. It depends. Depends on
terrible.
If that particular, if Zambia's, I think, government or, system seeks out that sort of thing, then, yeah.
It reminds me of the situation in Bhopal with the pesticide plant. Bhopal, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. Okay, that's going to bring us to our next segment that we're adding. Also, it's called we'll call it Q&A. I suppose we have a question. All right, so Jaylene has sent us a DM on Instagram. She sent us a video of a Renaissance fair because she's a big fan of that stuff.
Yeah.
She says, "Hello, Adam and Becca. Saw this reel on." What's that?
I want to go to a Renaissance fair.
Right. So Jaylene says, "Hello, Adam and Becca. Saw this reel on my FYP. Thought at least Becca would appreciate the lovely dark humor. I appreciate dark humor myself."
Well, you do live with me,
It's true.
so.
Being a Renaissance Fair attendee, I would have loved to do this in the past. I enjoyed your two-parter on the bubonic plague, so this definitely made it extra funny and noteworthy. Long-time listener, first-time DMer. That's my favorite part. Um, Also, thank you for telling my husband about the Poison Squad. It's on my book list to hunt down now. Lots of love. And then she poses her question. Oh, if you do add a question segment before or after housekeeping, which we are, I have one for you. Based on the Deadly Plants Poison Garden series, which particular species would you love to grow in your garden if you were able? I'm quite fond of Digitalis foxglove, especially the peach-colored variety.
Foxglove is pretty, and it's just fun. It's fun to watch grow. So I wouldn't mind having that maybe in my rose bush, like around my rose bushes, to be honest. I wouldn't put it in my backyard because I have a dog and she doesn't usually mess with things, but just in
Yeah,
case,
just in
you
case.
know, I think it'd be cool to have, I'm not sure if this one was in that particular episode or not, but Lily of the Valley would be nice to have around the trees, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, that sort of thing. They look like little fairy flowers to me.
Yeah.
And maybe some Brugmansia, some of the Angel's trumpets, I think. I think those
Hmm.
would be pretty cool. And of course, just maybe a pot of nightshade somewhere. I know that one was probably in a separate episode, but I just think it's a pretty plant. Obviously, don't eat the berries or any part of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, I would love to have like I'd also love to have like a gothic garden. I know that sounds kind of funny, like and like just one little
That's
area
exactly
where it's
like you.
like
That's so on brand.
where all the like leaves and flowers are like maybe not all the leaves, but like all the flowers are kind of like dark purple or even black or whatever.
Hmm.
That'd be cool. Yeah, or
Yeah.
maybe a section that of night blooming flowers. That would be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I would. If there, I don't know, if there was some way to get away with it, I would love to grow one of those trees that drops the fruit that can knock you out cold.
Oh, like they have one in California, right?
Yeah. Is
I
it
think
Australia?
they're native to Australia, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Gosh, what is that?
I would want it to grow in our back. If there was some way to safely do this, I would love to grow it in our backyard. And as it gets taller and taller, like I'd do it just for the neighbors. Like over time, they all keep noticing, what is that? What is that tree? And then they just see that the giant fruit hanging off of it. It's like, that looks like that could really hurt somebody. Like just to freak out the neighbors. I would love that. So
I don't think you'd have
like the
room in the
real
backyard.
payoff. What was that?
I don't think you'd have room in the backyard for that tree.
Yeah, I'm not thinking practically. This is aspirational.
Hang on,
Like, right. So I would love for it to grow in the backyard. And the real payoff would be the post in the neighborhood Facebook group. Like when people start just, I say nothing. And the neighbors just start theorizing, what is that god awful looking tree in that guy's yard or whatever. I would love that so much. For those of you who don't, live in the US, we have this thing in the neighborhoods that we live in. We have these things called a homeowners association. And in order to live in one of these neighborhoods, you have to agree to the guidelines of the HOA, is what we abbreviate it as. If
Well,
you ever
they
meet
don't have that.
anyone,
They don't have that everywhere else. Like anywhere else.
they might have something like that. It feels like an American thing because it's stupid. Um, like everyone hates HOAs. If you ever meet someone who really likes the HOA, you can't be friends with that person. They're not a normal person. So just a heads up.
They're probably in it, or they're working for. Well, yeah, they end up like you pay basically to be punished.
That's a great way to say it. My God. Excuse me. But the thing about HOAs is that they are an oppressive authoritarian regime. And they nitpick, they send people driving down the streets of the neighborhood looking at your yard.
Bunya pine. That's
Bunya
what it was.
pine.
A bunya pine.
So
Mm-hmm.
they
It's a
inspect how
pine
tall your
cone,
grass.
not the fruit. Sorry.
What was that?
It's the pine cone of the tree. It's huge.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So the HOA is an oppressive regime that any freedom-loving person must push back against. They inspect the length of your grass, and they fine you real money if it is too tall.
Real money.
And I hate them with the passion of 1,000 poets. I really do. So
the people that come through, they don't even live in this neighborhood. They come through in this little car and it has
no.
the association name on it, and they just drive
Yes.
around, and you'll see them stop and write down notes.
Like if I see them parked near my house and they're writing, I'll immediately run up to their window and say, hey, what are you doing? What you writing there?
I just wave,
Oh, I confront them. But any way that I can stick it to the HOA, I will. And if a bunya pine is the best way to do that, yeah, we're going to grow one of those.
We should get no, because you have to have their approval.
No, I don't.
You could get a bat house. Bat house, they can't take it down.
This is an amazing hack. Okay, this is an amazing hack. If you want to stick it to an HOA, put a bat dwelling or a bat house like up on a spire in the back of your backyard, because they are federally protected. And they eat mosquitoes. It's actually a great idea.
Just don't touch them. Yeah.
No,
I mean, you'll be
don't.
fine.
We've taught you about that.
As much as I like bats,
they're so cute. Don't touch them
unless you're a handler and you've actually had some sort of protection.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's Q&A for today, my dear. What are we getting into today? I believe it's part 2 of something, right?
Swimmers beware.
Swimmers beware.
And this one, I know last week I talked a lot about algae last week, and I'm surprised no one got tired of me talking about algae, and some people probably did, but because I did not expect to talk that much about algae, poisonous algae, and stuff like that. But we're actually going to get
before we move forward. Let me add: send us questions on social media or DMs, the Patreon, wherever you like, and we'll respond to them here on the podcast. My apologies. Please continue.
So we're actually going to get into one of my favorite topics to discuss in just a little bit. So get excited or scared. It's going to be, maybe. But I did not want to cheat you out of the anxieties of some of the other meanies that could interrupt a good vacation if swimming is involved, or even hanging around the water. Yeah. So let's briefly cover some of those. Now, do be aware, I am not telling you don't go swimming this summer. You have fun, swim. This is just things to be kind of aware of, and a lot of these are relatively rare anyway. But it's just fun to talk about. It's interesting to know about that. These little critters can just be kind of wherever you are. So just good to be aware of, Now, while obviously when going swimming in a pool, especially a public or neighborhood pool, it's important to be prepared. I honestly hate this part of going to the pool, to be honest, because we have a pool in our neighborhood, and it's nice, but and Camilla can just, she just can't wait to get out there. So it's like she's always like running back and forth while I'm trying to get things ready, not listening to a word I'm saying. Like, Camilla, go do this real quick. Go get this real quick. And she's just running back and forth. Yeah. And so she gets excited. She can't focus on what I need her to do before we leave, like going to the bathroom, like now, so we don't have to worry about it when we get there. And there's bathrooms at our neighborhood pool, but like there's a code to get in now. I don't know what it is. This was done after a bunch of teenage vandal wannabes or whatever went in and destroyed the bathrooms, basically, because they were bored or whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, what they didn't realize was there were cameras, and the Facebook page for our neighborhood consists of amateur sleuths, basically. So really stupid thing to do with cameras about.
As much time as these kids spend online, I mean, the fact that they didn't know that they would absolutely be on camera the entire time.
Did you see that car they got smashed into?
Yes.
Oh, that truck, and
everybody knows exactly who it is.
Yeah,
everybody
he
knows.
lives here, and it's the second time that something on that property has been hit by this truck.
They hit their mailbox. like last year or something.
Anyway, I mean, they hit it good too.
Mm-hmm.
They hit it good. Anyway, so yeah, I literally get on Facebook only to see what's going on the
That's right.
neighborhood page and the school page. I don't really do anything else on there, but it can be really
Yeah.
amusing to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so suburban. I'm like cheap, anxious suburban though, because like I'm not rolling around in one of those like 6-seater golf carts or like,
Oh my God.
and
Oh,
I'm actually able to tell you where my kid is. No shade. I just get nervous when I see like really young children walking down these roads.
yeah.
So when there's cars just flying, hitting mailboxes and cars. So I actually saved a 4-year-old once from eating asphalt on his bike. Did I ever tell you that? I was like walking with
What?
Camilla. I was walking with Camilla and I literally had to chase this kid down on his bicycle downhill while he was screaming for his older sister to help him, but I guess his older sister had left him behind somewhere. Anyway, yeah. So here I am chasing this kid, trying to make sure he doesn't just, pound into the asphalt. But back to pool stuff. There's always a sunscreen to put on. Please wear your sunscreen. Wear it. No one is immune from skin cancer. No one. And making sure, the kids have the toys and the floats, because I'm not coming back for anything once we're there. Then the pool key, which is the one thing I usually forget, right? Getting all the other stuff together, and then you forget the one thing you really need to actually get in there. I keep it in the car now. So yeah, pool days are fun, but they also take a good bit of work to. Another precaution for those with babies is the swim diaper. Our pool, like most these days, requires children that are not potty trained, babies really, usually like 3 and under or under 3, to wear a swim diaper so that if they have a bowel movement, it does not contaminate the water and
Yeah.
that everyone is swimming in. I still remember the E. coli outbreak that happened in the summer of 1998 at Whitewater. It's a water park in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yep.
I say Atlanta, Georgia, like I've never been to Georgia. I live in Georgia. Atlanta. It was actually caused by a kid who pooped in the kiddie pool, basically, or at least there was fecal matter in the kiddie pool.
Yeah.
So
do you know who got sick from that?
it was a shortstop kid.
Yes. Are you saying this from memory?
No, I did research, so kind of.
Oh, you got notes on it. Okay.
Yeah, Braves shortstop Weiss.
Walt Weiss.
Walt Weiss, yeah.
His son Brody contracted E. coli, and he was very sick.
Yeah, you can get very sick from E. coli. It's not as much as you probably see it in the news, like that Salmonella, Listeria, like with, there's a recall because of this, and this. They just had a recall on tomatoes, I think, for Salmonella. They can make you really, really sick, though.
Fun fact, Walt Weiss is still on the coaching staff for the Atlanta Braves right now.
Nice. Got a pretty long career then. In terms of baseball. I feel like sports is like the modeling world for like in women's, like, I guess, well, women are in sports too. I'm just saying, like, when it comes to like football, baseball, like once you get a certain age, they're like, okay, bye. Right. The same thing with like modeling and stuff. You better go figure out how to make perfume or something if you want to stay relevant. I don't know. It's kind of messed up, but when they're done with you, they're done with you. So I know that's gross about all this, but babies do this. So there needs to be protection between them and the water that everybody else is swimming in. When the whitewater thing happened, it was not a rule at that time that babies had to wear one of these swim diapers. I don't even know if swim diapers were a thing at this point. I don't recall, to be honest.
They weren't?
I don't know. I didn't have a kid in the 90s. I was a kid
in
the 90s, so I don't know. But yeah, it led to disaster, really. 26 kids between the ages of 11 months and 12 years old became very ill with E. coli, which it causes a lot of gastrointestinal distress involving watery or bloody diarrhea, abdominal pain and cramps, as well as nausea and vomiting for some. Most healthy adults can get over this in about a week's time if it's, a mild case. But younger children and the elderly or those with compromised immune systems may not. Obviously, a complication can be dehydration, and in severe cases, the infection can lead to life-threatening kidney failure as well. In this case, with Whitewater back in 98, 26 children were infected and very ill. 7 were hospitalized, and 1 ultimately died. And not all survivors recovered fully. At least one girl who was 4 years old at the time of infection, she had a stroke while she was sick and was left with neurological damage that affected her movement a good bit.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, oh, you're sick and then you get better. Some people are left with issues from kidney failure or, other complications, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the park was obviously closed temporarily. There was this big investigation on how this happened, and it was later discovered that, for one, there was fecal matter in the kiddie pool, and the chlorine levels were only like a fourth of what they should have been at the time. So
Brother.
there was nothing to kill this bacteria, right?
Dude. Was there legal action? Okay.
Yeah. I'm surprised. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, bacteria, including those found in fecal matter, are in every pool. That's just how it is. You're not going to get away from it. But this is one reason why chlorine is necessary for these pools, because it will sanitize, it will kill those bacteria so that other people don't get infected. And it's also why swim diapers are a big deal, so that those bacterial numbers don't, skyrocket during an incident. Of course, there were multiple lawsuits. I think one of the kids that became ill, was the child of the Atlanta Braves shortstop, Walt Weiss, at that time. Anyway, Six Flags ended up actually buying the park, and they made it much safer. I was going to say earlier, I'm surprised they're still open, because I went just a few years ago, but I know they're under new ownership too. The kiddie pool is gone. Now there's just like a splash area, so there's no standing water in case of an accident like that. Water levels throughout the park are tested with automatic testing systems, for chlorine and stuff, and with actual people who patrol and test sections like every hour to be sure the chlorine levels are where they should be. Not gonna lie, that
Yeah.
sounds like a fun job. Like, you just get to
You would
walk
love
around and
that.
test water. I probably would. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
they'd get annoyed with me though, 'cause I'd be like, I don't know, we got like 1 point difference. We need to fix that, right? They'd be like, will you calm down? No, I will not calm down.
Actually, I won't.
So, yeah, I will not until you fix it. So, yeah, honestly, I feel like people with autism, neurodivergence would be great in quality control anyway.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
like, let us do these things. Now, yeah, so they need to make sure the chlorine levels are where they should be. All kids under the age of 3 are required to wear a swim diaper. I went to Whitewater, like I said, with Camilla a few years back, and my mom went with us. My one ick was the amount of bare feet just slapping around constantly on wet concrete. That's just me, though. That's just me. I know that's
Oh,
just me,
man.
probably. So
Yeah.
I'm a fan of flip flops or water shoes, and they tell you can wear those. They kind of recommend that you wear those, but not everybody finds those comfortable. I guess, I mean, foot fungus is still better than E. coli infections. So I'm glad they were able to sort that out.
If
But
you have to choose.
it's just seeing, like, it's just seeing it. I'm like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, wet hair. Wet hair disgusts me so much, and like you'll just see strands of wet hair because
It makes
it comes out. You're playing.
I
It's not anybody's fault. It's no big
I
deal.
have
It
seen
is what it is.
I have seen your visceral reaction
Can't
to
do it.
said
Yeah.
substance, and it is serious.
As a nurse, I can handle vomit. I can handle snot.
It
I've
it
I
doesn't.
have
Yeah.
cleaned I have cleaned butts and all kinds of things, but
Yeah.
wet hair is what gets me, right? There are other bacteria that may be present in pools as well that can lead to dysentery. I know, Oregon Trail stuff. We talk about Oregon Trail a lot on here. Not gonna lie,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're kind of going back in time health-wise anyway at the moment. So Oregon Trail. Um,
Does does this ring a bell? Oh,
there,
did I
Oregon
lose you?
Trail. No, I'm here.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
You have died of
Mhm.
dysentery. And I feel like this was
That's
a
right.
great teaching moment back in the past. But, you know, they just made us put our floppy disks in and play and leave the teachers alone. So,
Oh, the floppy disk, bro.
floppy disk. Anyway,
The floppy disk into the Apple IIe computer.
now kids just carry around Chromebooks and iPads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
crazy stuff. I would have lost so many Chromebooks. I'm not going to lie.
They'll never know the struggle of trying to shoot buffalo with a space bar.
Maybe that's why I never beat Oregon Trail. I kept losing floppy disks.
Is that the reason?
That might be. Yeah, because I was bad about keeping up with stuff.
Oh man,
You know,
we gotta play Oregon Trail.
back when I was called lazy and, not paying
Yes.
attention when it was ADHD, and, here we are.
And the tism.
Me. She doesn't talk to other kids at recess. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, I've seen the other kids, I didn't want to talk to them for many reasons, but they were kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So dysentery is still around. It's not something that just went away. It's really just a general term for diarrheal illness, where you have bloody or like mucal diarrhea with mucus in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's often associated with fever and abdominal pain. So dysentery that's not parasitic in nature, because it can be, is typically caused by bacteria such as Campylobacter, in which you would call it Campylobacteriosis, which is just more, GI distress. Shigella, Shigellosis, Salmonella, and E. coli as well. So these illnesses are just as dangerous for small children, 5 and under especially, and those with compromised immune systems. So, typically dysentery is basically an illness with diarrhea that is bloody or has mucus. I know that sounds disgusting, but it's dangerous, and this is why a lot of people die
We're just
from it.
clinically describing it.
Yes. Clinically, a lot of things you get kind of desensitized from gross things.
Mm-hmm.
You just do.
Mm-hmm.
Or honestly, like I won't go into those stories. Never mind. So yeah, the chlorine levels are very important, and if someone has had an accident in the pool, you need to get out. The pool needs to be closed until it can be cleaned, treated, and tested to make sure that it is correctly set, safe to get back in. And that's what our pool, most pools that like neighborhood pools, public pools, they're supposed to go by those guidelines. They could, because honestly, the lawsuits they could face if someone got sick with like at Whitewater, right? So they're typically gonna go by those rules. Usually ours closes for at least 24 hours, and sometimes you think your kid doesn't need a swim diaper, but then, and I'll be honest, swim diapers are expensive. I'm not gonna lie, they are. But it's best thing you can do is get one of those expensive ones that just lasts, and you could wash it, and just, I know kids change sizes, but it'll last you longer than those disposable ones. So Pseudomonas aeruginosa can be found in pools and hot tubs as well. This is often the cause of swimmer's ear, otitis, just some inflammation in the ear. If bacterial, I know sometimes people just get like irritation in their ear just from the water itself. But if bacterial, this is usually Pseudomonas. Hot tub rash, that doesn't sound fun. Folliculitis is another, like, it's just the
hot tub rash.
Yeah, the the medical term being folliculitis, but hot tub rash, Also, hot hand-foot syndrome. I'm not talking about hand, foot, mouth. That's a children's illness, but adults can get it too. It can be very contagious. But this is hot hand-foot syndrome. This is where like painful nodules and redness kind of shows up on the hands and feet due to this particular bacteria. Hotel pools and hot tubs that are not well monitored or cleaned are hotspots for this. So if you're planning on staying in a hotel, it's good to ask how often maintenance is done on the pool. Honestly, they should have that information available anyway, I would think. I don't stay in hotels because I don't know. I have a really hard time with hotels. I wish I could, because maybe I'd travel more, but I really struggle with, I can't sleep in hotels, and I get really anxious, and I don't know. There's all these different noises. It's a different place. I just really struggle with that.
Yes. There could not be more change in, in a situation like that. And then you have to try to sleep in all of the change.
Yeah. Also, knowing what I know about
Oh,
certain
friend.
pests and health stuff. And anyway,
Mm.
bring your own pillows for one.
Sure. Also, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, I know. And it's not just hotels. I know that. I'm sure I've gone to other places that are not exactly clean, but when you know certain things and you're just like, you can't stop thinking about those things. And that's why I'm not going to go too deep into that now, because I don't want you guys to have to think about it either. Now,
follow for more content like this.
But yeah, these are hotspots for stuff like this. In March 2023, 23 persons developed ear pain, rash, or pain and swelling in their feet or hands after swimming in a hotel pool in Maine. The outbreak was caused by Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Inadequate maintenance and monitoring of chlorine concentration likely contributed to this outbreak. One study I found on this matter stated treated recreational water venues such as pools, hot tubs located at hotels represent 1/3 of sources reported treated recreational water associated outbreaks. So when these outbreaks are caused by Pseudomonas, they predominantly occur during January through April. It likes those temps, I imagine. So moving on, even Legionella bacteria can be found in heated pool water or spas. This causes Legionnaires disease, which we haven't talked about a whole lot, but we'll go over. Yeah. So this bacteria multiplies in warmer water. Regular pool water is usually too cold, but in warmer areas or indoors, this may not be the case. So like indoor pools, or warmer areas where it's been warm for a while, pools that are not maintained very well. They inactivate once the temperature falls below 20 degrees Celsius. But some indoor pools or pools in hotter areas may be above this temp, to be honest, when it's hot outside, or if you're like it's indoors. If a biofilm of such forms in spaces like this, or even in pipes, like in humid, warm spaces, they can become aerosolized by any sort of disturbance and cause Legionnaire's disease. So I would be mainly concerned with indoor spaces for this one, especially at like hotels, gyms, spas, because of the lack of ventilation. If the bacteria contaminates the water and then like an aerosol or fine spray is created, the contaminated droplets can be inhaled deep into the lungs rather than being swallowed. It could also be aspirated via the water and cause infections. So you get some water into your lungs, that kind of thing. But now this means like anyone nearby could also potentially be affected if there were a high enough level of bacteria in the air. Now, Legionnaire's disease is a type of pneumonia, so symptoms can include fever, chills, muscle aches, and cough. This can be deadly for those with compromised immune systems or those very young or older. It was actually named for an outbreak back in 1976 among attendees of the American Legion Convention being hosted at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia. This is where it was first identified. It was actually quite a mystery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there were these men that were becoming deathly ill, and it was a race to see what they had in common, because they noticed okay, something's going on among these particular men. But within a week of the convention, more than 130 people, mostly men, had been hospitalized and 25 were reported dead. The source of this Legionella bacteria was actually discovered breeding in the cooling tower, which is this warm, damp space of the hotel's air conditioning system. So it basically spread through the vents at that point and was being inhaled by those attending this convention.
Oh, so through the HVAC system.
Yeah, it was
Interesting.
yeah, it was up there just hanging out. Nobody knew.
So it wasn't the pool.
It wasn't the pool. I mean, pool water can technically do this, but it's usually more a case of it likes these pipes and these piping systems for heated pools, spas, hot tubs, or even HVAC systems. So yeah, it likes to kind of
What year was this?
group in this. 1976. Let me make sure.
76. Yeah. So there's there's HVAC everywhere at that point.
And obviously they don't know that bacteria can breed in these areas and then spread through the air through these things, but it can cause pneumonia symptoms. So, but there in total there were 149 Legionnaires who became sick. 33 other persons associated with the hotel or in the area also became sick. Of these 182 cases, 29 persons died. So it likes hot, wet places. So,
well, a cooling tower makes sense. I mean, I don't know HVAC super well, but it sounds like a place where, air is transitioning from one temperature to another.
Yeah,
and so that creates a great environment for the bacteria to grow. It's similar to like I work with older geriatric patients day to day. So many men in that population have BPH, or a benign prostatic hypertrophy, and it's usually it's the most common cause of urinary retention for males, for older men, and it creates the perfect environment for chronic urinary tract infections because the urine is kind of just pooling. Like they don't actually effectively empty their bladder fully every time that they go to urinate. And so it creates a great environment for UTI to happen.
You can get like Pseudomonas in your bladder too, which is, we're talking about Legionnaires. Legionnaires disease, but you get what I mean. The previous topic was a form of Pseudomonas, but and so really for this one, like hot tubs, spas, HVAC, any kind of system like that with pipes that isn't really well maintained or cleaned or checked, that kind of thing.
It sounds like any closed system. Like I'm wondering what kind of innovation they made to prevent bacterial buildup inside of an HVAC system, because like it sounds like it really could happen to any HVAC system at that point.
Well, also like hot tubs that are not cleaned. I mean, if they're bubbling, you can't see what's in there. Which is gross. I know, but usually this is pretty rare because we know to take care of stuff. Most places aren't going to let things get that bad, I hope. So it does. We do have outbreaks still, though, every so often. So it is something to keep an eye on. There is another milder case of this illness known as Pontiac fever. It was named for Pontiac, Michigan, where it was first identified. It's caused by the Legionella bacteria as well, but this is more of a non-fatal illness. It doesn't involve pneumonia. It's more of a mild flu. So that's interesting. And there was an outbreak of this in early 1988 in the UK, which became known as, God help me, Loch Goilhead fever. Any Scottish listeners, let me know if I said that correctly.
Oh, is it Loch, like Loch?
Loch Goilhead. Yeah. Loch Goilhead.
How do you spell it?
Lochgoilhead.
Goilhead. Okay.
Goilhead. I looked it up. Okay.
All I can hear is Garen Noon's voice. That's not how you say that.
So since that time, other species of Legionella that cause Pontiac fever have been identified, most notably in New Zealand in 2007, where Legionella longbeachii, it's fun, was discovered. The New Zealand outbreak also marked the first time Pontiac fever had been traced to potting soil. I mean, potting soil, though, it can be damp and warm. So
okay, that makes sense. All right.
depending on where you live. And it's also like if you've got it in like a bag, it sits outside, it's humid in there, it's moist. So yeah, if pipes, pumps, filter systems, etc., they're not properly cleaned and disinfected, biofilm or this sort of slimy consisting of bacteria, scale, and other elements can build up and potentially colonize the water system. So this is the case, like I said, for hot tubs, like heated pools, any other damp, warm area the bacteria can multiply and thrive in. So prevention for this now just involves appropriate monitoring and maintenance. So wherever you swim, just be sure the maintenance is good. We honestly need to do an episode on the Flint water crisis eventually, because
100%.
Legionnaires was actually a part of that as well, alongside
Was it really?
heavy metal poisoning, due to unsanitary water.
You know,
So
it's not difficult to find poisonous things in the news. Like they come around. You know what I mean? we really could watch the news for a minute and just pick our topics.
well, especially when you're like on social media and the algorithm picks up that, hey, poisons. You'll see a lot of stuff. Now, hepatitis A can also be spread via fecal matter found in water that's not treated well. This is a contagious liver infection. It's a viral. It's one of the hepatitises, and they're all different. Like it's not the same as hepatitis C, but this can cause fever, weakness, fatigue, nausea, loss of appetite, jaundice, which is that yellowing of the skin or eyes due to the liver issues going on, stomach pain, vomiting, dark urine, pale stools, and diarrhea. Now, illness can be mild and last for like a few weeks, or it can be severe and last for months. But there is a vaccine for hepatitis A, and here in the US, for now, it is part of the standard vaccine schedule.
I'm sorry. The way you have to say for now.
Everything hurts. Okay. Now, another virus that we should all know and hate, and I'm only going to talk briefly about this one because this one is very well known.
But no one turned up except my mom and a boyfriend who I hate.
But this one is the norovirus. This one is often the cause of that stomach bug, which is gastroenteritis being the more scientific name for that, I guess, stomach bug. But it's the one you usually hear about. Oh, there's a stomach bug going around. It's probably norovirus. So it's usually it's also spread fecal oral sort of route and is notorious for infections on cruise ships. I hear a lot of cases of norovirus that have hit cruise ships. I blame the close quarters, honestly. Buffet style meals, swimming areas, and just people not washing their hands. Fun fact.
Oh, God.
Hand sanitizer does not kill norovirus. It has a protein.
Wash your hands, folks.
It has a protein-based shell called a capsid, and sanitizer will not break through it. So wash your nasty little handses. Also,
do you have a capsid that protects you from talking to people in public?
I don't appreciate you bringing that up. I have walls, okay? Cellular protein-based walls.
You have a phospholipid bilayer that prevents strangers from approaching you for no reason.
Was it the Good Place where like the guy in the bad place, like he would like cover himself up in that cocoon?
Yes. That's such a good show. Oh my gosh.
Did they ever finish it? Like I feel like it got kind of left.
I don't know.
I'll have to check it out, but
I got to look into that.
Anyway, so wash your hands and also sanitize surfaces. Bring little packs of Lysol wipes. You could buy these little bitty, travel packs of Lysol wipes. You could just wipe stuff down because that's got like.
And I would like to mention.
Stuff in it.
I would like to mention, just as a point of caution for the U.S. population, there is not quite enough staff. I'm hearing this from a board-certified allergist, a doctor who's popular on social media. He made a video just letting people know why he will not be on a cruise ship for the next 4 years.
Well, it's been a problem for a while.
Right. It's kind of the dirty little secret. Like bang for the buck, a cruise is a really great vacation. Like you can really do some significant traveling, and because it's all inclusive and the sheer scale the sheer amount of business that these cruise lines do, they can make it fairly affordable. So it's a great opportunity to travel. They don't talk about norovirus. And the things that keep these things in check is regular inspection, health inspection. The staffing is not what it was as far as keeping these boats up to code. And so I have to agree with the board certified physician. I also will not be found on a cruise ship for the next several years.
And it's there's other illnesses that spread on cruise ships too. You got a bunch of people in a place where they can't really get away from each other, which sounds terrifying enough as it is. But
yes,
and it's people aren't. If you've got people touching things, not washing their hands, just I use sanitizer. Yeah, that doesn't kill norovirus though. Just wash your hands. When it comes to norovirus, like I said, that doesn't work. So, and it's you likely won't die from norovirus. Mainly deaths are due to dehydration, if anything. So, like maybe the younger or elderly or immunocompromised might have more problems, but you will hate your life for a few days. Okay.
Also, especially if you're our age, you can't miss work.
Yeah, and it's
so yeah,
not a fun illness. So so moving on to Giardia. Am I saying Giardia right? Is it Giardia?
Giardians, I think is how you say it.
I'm gonna look it up
Giardians.
while I'm here.
Okay.
I meant to look it up earlier.
Is it Giada de Laurentiis?
No.
I think that's the proper.
Yeah, it's Giardia.
Pretty sure I'm right about that.
Yeah.
No.
Just making sure I wasn't saying it with the wrong kind of G sound. You know what I mean?
Giada de Laurentiis.
I've been saying Giardia for years, but I'm just like, is that how you say it? Did no one actually correct me because they didn't want to make me feel bad? But it is Giardia.
How many people do you talk about this with? How many people do you talk about this with on a regular basis where they would correct you or lie to you about it?
I mean, I guess, or know what I'm talking about.
You intentionally do the 99% of your communication with other humans through a text format.
This is true.
You don't.
Well, maybe that's why I'm
Anyways.
am I saying this right? Because I've said it this way for a long time and I've never been corrected. So
I digress.
Anyway, Giardia was right. I was right. Okay. This can make anyone sick with giardiasis. Sorry, that I throws me. And
Giada de Laurentiis.
Oh my god.
Is that it?
This can cause prolonged diarrhea lasting like 2 weeks or more. You don't want this. Alongside abdominal cramps and nausea. I mean, don't swallow pool water, obviously, but that is easier said than done if you're a kid having fun in the pool with friends, right? Hygiene is a must when guarding against this one. Don't swim or let children swim when they're sick, especially with diarrhea. I feel like that's common sense, but here we are. If one person infected with the Giardia has diarrhea in the water can be contaminated with tens of thousands of Giardia parasite germs. It only takes like 10 or fewer of these to cause infection, which means that swallowing even a small amount of contaminated water can make you sick. So don't get around sick children that are swimming. I mean, you may not even know it, but don't take your kids swimming if they're sick with like anything that can. Honestly, just don't take your kids swimming when they're sick with anything. So, but yeah. Giardia can also be spread by swallowing contaminated water at water playgrounds, hot tubs, lakes, rivers, springs, ponds, streams, and oceans. Honestly, all of these water sources probably have a lot of different little monsters in them, so it's not that uncommon. But I mean, just try not to swallow water when swimming if you can help it, bottom line, because it's gross anyway, right? I mean, I know sometimes you don't know that you're doing it if it's just a tiny bit, but another parasite that may be present also, you can find Giardia too at like petting zoos and stuff. But anyway, another parasite that may be present is Cryptosporidium. Unlike some other parasites like toxoplasmosis, crypto is capable of completing its life cycle within a single host. We'll talk about toxoplasmosis much later down the road, but this results in cyst stages that are excreted in the feces or through inhalation of coughed fomites, and they're capable of.
I'm sorry. Can you demonstrate that again for the viewers?
You know.
No. You went.
Yeah.
Do that. That's the sound. Do it again.
Just the coughing of the. Anyway.
And the best thing is that you're designing that audio, that sound with like your disgust in mind. You're like, ugh.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I've seen and heard lots of people cough without covering their freaking mouths, and even my child, who she was like 6 at this point, she might have been 5 or 6. She was going to pre-K, so she must have been 4. She was 4 or 5 because she was one of those like late starters because she was born in October. And she told this kid was just hacking up a lung in the hallway, right? And she looks at him and she's like, "Cover your mouth." And I was like, "Hello, dang, okay." I mean, I agree, but maybe a little nicer. Jeez, he didn't do it again.
It's so great. It's so great when you have to look at your own kid and be like, "Geez, chill out, bro."
I mean, I get it. It's gross, but he's a kid, calm down. Anyway, kids gonna kids, right? So, yeah. But these are capable of just causing unwanted GI distress. I mean, there is no wanted GI distress, I imagine, but this includes watery.
I've never had GI distress that I wanted. Yeah,
watery diarrhea. It can also affect the respiratory system as well, though. So, if inhaled, it can cause a persistent cough. Infection can last from a few weeks to a month, and treatment is really just rehydration and supportive care. So, it may become a chronic illness for children or those with compromised immune systems, though, and it is pretty resistant to chlorine. So that sucks.
Excuse me, what?
Yeah, it can be
resistant to chlorine.
There are some,
brother.
There are some bacteria that are resistant to chlorine and parasites. So now,
how rude.
Right. It is filtered in various ways out of the drinking water at treatment plants. So if you ever see a boil advisory, do not go against it. Boiling is the safest option to get rid of Cryptosporidium. So just a heads up, most of these microbes I've mentioned, if not all, can be in untreated drinking water, also in rivers, ponds. So if backpacking, don't just drink from anywhere, please. Also, petting zoos, like I mentioned with Giardia, farms where animals may be infected can be causes of illness with this parasite. And it's just, whenever we go to the zoo, they have a little farm section, right? And they have a little area for you to wash your hands after. It doesn't get used very often, and that worries me so much. I'll just see people walking out, like, you're petting the animals. Oh, it's so cute. And it's just a hand sanitizer. And like, wash your hands. Wash them. Right? Just please. And I know the sinks, they don't look that great, but like, it's what they have. They do have soap and water. So just, if you're going to pet the animals, wash your hands. They're cute, but the parasites they carry are not. Okay, so I cannot not mention Vibrio on this list, at least briefly.
Well, obviously.
Because it is a nasty one. You know how I'm always saying, do not go into the ocean with an open wound? Yeah. And
but the salt is good for it. It'll clean it.
By open wound, I'm not talking about like a crater-sized wound either. I'm talking about any kind of scrape, any kind of, if the skin is broken, even if it's not, Vibrio can still get you. I mean, I hate to say that, but you're more at risk when there's a point of entry that you can see like that. So, obviously, some may think, well, duh, sharks, but I'm not talking about sharks so much. I'm thinking more about Vibrio vulnificus. Sounds like a Disney villain, to be honest. But this is this is a
Vibrio
bacteria.
maleficent.
Yeah, it is quite maleficent. But this is a bacteria found in water, warm salt water, really, or brackish environments, meaning that there is like a mixture of salt water and fresh water. It's relatively rare. There's about 150 to 200 cases in the U.S. annually. That's still too much for me because it's a nasty, nasty illness, bacteria. But when I say it's nasty, it really is. It can also infect humans via shellfish ingestion. But let's start with infected wounds because I've been speaking on swimming for the most part. So any infected wound that may have come from being in ocean water or brackish water should be looked at as possible Vibrio infection. Swimmers, fishers, scuba divers, snorkelers, beach walkers, coral collectors, surfers, anyone like that with wounds or skin diseases are likely to be dealing with such an infection. And the sooner it's identified, the better. The better the possible outcome, really. So even if you just get your feet wet, and suddenly like your skin is like doing something terrible. Oh my God, why am I have blisters on my feet? You need to go get it looked at. Scary, I know, but this is rare. It's just something to be aware of. Should you come down with something crazy after just being in the water. Now, symptoms of infection may occur between 12 and 72 hours or not show up for like 12 days. It's one of those annoying sort of little suckers. Now, these can include fever, chills, redness, or rash on the skin that becomes painful and swollen, large, painful, fluid-filled blisters at the site. Like you'll know something is up, typically. Gastrointestinal distress, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting. It can also lead to low blood pressure, causing dizziness, weakness, and fainting, as well as to confusion, altered mental state, and elevated heart rate. At that point, it's usually becoming septic. So that's why you've got more issues going on. Now, the blisters and or skin lesions may spread and the tissue can just die and gangrene can set in. It can be really bad. So then you've got necrotizing fasciitis, basically. That can result requiring surgery to remove dead and infected tissue, even amputation to prevent further spread. So this can also quickly turn into sepsis and the patient can go into shock. So treatment can range from supportive, if mild, to antibiotics. It's actually pretty resistant to a lot of antibiotics, unfortunately. To surgical debridement of dead tissue, and amputation. So
incineration.
I think we have a picture of that guy, I think, that had to go through this.
Oh, this is the one. Okay. Yeah, let's pull up this gentleman here. Yeah, he's such a nice looking guy.
Oh, Vibrio don't care.
It's been 1 year since the caption at the bottom of the screen says it's been 1 year since Angel Perez, 61, of Millville, had all 4 of his limbs amputated after contracting a rare and deadly flesh-eating bacteria while crabbing in South Jersey water, so South New Jersey.
Which is honestly, I don't know that it gets that warm up there, so it's kind of even more rare, I imagine, in those areas. But it's typically, in warmer areas. But it can, there are people who have multiple amputations because of it. Death can result from septic shock, hemorrhage, due to like thrombocytopenia, so lack of platelets as a common complication. Also organ failure, especially those with liver disease or compromised immune systems.
I just had this pop in my head. Do you remember that girl who got they called it necrotizing fasciitis, but was it a bacterial infection? She lost all 4 arms and legs. Was it Amy something? She was in this area. Do you remember that?
I don't remember. You can get it from eating shellfish too. I'm about to talk about that too.
Yeah.
So
she went ziplining.
Now did she fall in the water?
She fell in the water.
Was it salt water?
I think it was fresh water, but she was at MCG.
There's other things that cause necrotizing fasciitis. Staph can do.
Yeah, I immediately want to go back and look it up now because I'm like, but what bacteria was it, know, that caused it? Because this is exactly what happened to her.
That led to it, yeah. So, yeah, it's rough. So in terms of shellfish, when contaminated shellfish, usually raw oysters, is ingested, symptoms can involve a sudden onset of vomiting, diarrhea, fever, and abdominal pain. This is usually within 24 hours of suspected seafood ingestion. Now, even with infection via ingestion, you can have the sores and the necrotizing fasciitis that can result, leading to necrosis and a need for surgery and amputation to save that person. It's usually like the main difference would be like what symptoms show up first. Now, yeah, so you would often need for this too, with the necrotizing fasciitis, there would be a need for surgery, amputation. Then you can have sepsis. Shock can also result from this form as well, usually resulting in death. Now, vibriosis, as the illness is sometimes called, can manifest very suddenly and progress very quickly. So I think the numbers I saw were like 1 in 5 die from this, and those who do survive, I mean, you got like Angel Perez here. He's survived, but he's missing quite a few limbs. So now those with this illness need to seek medical care immediately. Skin cellulitis and blisters should be cultured. Necrotic skin lesions should be debrided. Cutaneous abscesses need to be drained. Topicals such as silver sulfadiazide should be used to cover infected skin. That's going to be kind of an antimicrobial dressing. Underlying necrotizing fasciitis and myonecrosis really demand prompt surgical debridement and fasciotomy sometimes. Now, myonecrosis meaning death of muscle tissue as well. So that's where the fasciotomy comes in.
Yeah, I actually just looked up this girl. It was Amy Copeland, 24-year-old. Yeah. Oh, she fell from a homemade zip line over a river.
Yeah, and there can be all kinds of nasties in there. I know staph causes necrotizing fasciitis too.
Yeah, the bacteria that caused her case was Aeromonas hydrophila, which is typically found in warm brackish waters. Her left leg, other foot, and both hands have been amputated.
Yeah, there's a lot of little nasties in there. We could we could talk forever on all of the different bacterias, but yeah, not fun. Also, a homemade zip line.
God love them. That's such a
Okay.
redneck thing to do.
Well, that's a it's just you could break your neck too.
Yeah, when I was in West Georgia for my first clinical rotation in physical therapy school, on a weekend, we were right next door to a town called Tallapoosa. That's the real name of the town, which, by the way, is in Haralson County, which is kind of the meth capital of the southeastern United States. And they had a rope swing over a creek, and people were set up on it kind of had like a beach to it. People were set up on the side of that creek like it was the beach. They had beach chairs and coolers and all that. It was amazing. They were blasting some terrible country music, of course.
Only time I've ever been in a creek was when I was in my ichthyology class, and we were there in waders and doing testing of the water and stuff. You don't want to know what can be in those waters. Okay, and I'm telling you anyway in this episode. But yeah, and there's another reason to avoid rope swings that we'll talk about towards the end of this. So this is imperative to prevent limb necrosis and subsequent amputation. We were talking about the guy with the amputations from Vibrio, and yeah, they do their best to avoid it.
Do you mind if I throw up on the screen? I actually found an article about Amy Copeland. Is it okay if I throw that up on the screen here? Okay. Here we are. Amy Copeland battling necrotizing fasciitis, now able to speak. She got extremely ill.
Yeah, and this is not from.
This is from. Let's see. What was that?
This isn't from Vibrio, but a different bacteria. Correct.
It's not.
But it's
right. She ended up. It was a it was an extremely similar
Yeah.
physical situation. She ended up with being a quad amputee. This is May 29th of 2012.
This would have been, and it was from a creek. She fell in a creek.
It was, yeah. Where's that part at? Yeah, 24-year-old University of West Georgia graduate student developed the rare infection after cutting her leg in a May 1st fall from a homemade zip line over a river.
So it was an open wound, basically.
Yes. Doctors closed the gash with 22 staples, but her condition worsened over the next few days until she was eventually hospitalized and diagnosed with the flesh-eating necrotizing fasciitis. And I think I mentioned it before, but it's right here on the screen. Aeromonas hydrophila, typically found in warm brackish waters.
Which is, similar to a lot of these other ones, honestly, because you can find Vibrio in brackish waters too. So yeah, it's...
Yeah. And this is a photo of her. Like, she was very young. But I also, I don't know, maybe like a year and a half later, I randomly happened across a video on Facebook, and Amy Copeland was the speaker at a college graduation. And she came to the podium in a power wheelchair. She's, a quad amputee, but she came to the podium and she used her residual limbs and her two upper extremities to place an iPad on the podium, which she had her speech on for the commencement. So immediately you can tell she's adapted to use a power wheelchair for mobility, and she's also using a mobile device, for day-to-day work. And I don't know, it was very cool to see. Just, as a physical therapist, I'm always, when anybody gets injured or hurt or anything like that, it's I'm always thinking about the rehab phase. Like, okay, how are you gonna, and if there's, how are you going to adapt based on what kind of shape you end up in after the fact? So that was
also
good
has a lot
to see.
To do with your mental health with the situation. Well, because it can be, it's a big change and a big loss. So it's not just Vibrio that can cause necrotizing fasciitis. And when dealing with the situation, adequate fluid resuscitation is a big deal. Maintaining an adequate airway, using vasopressors, medications as necessary. And that is, to sort of, it's kind of a toss of the dice sometimes, because it's like, we need to take this patient to surgery because this arm is so infected or this leg is so infected. The wound is just going to get worse. If we don't amputate, they could die, but also they could die in surgery because sepsis is causing, the vitals to plummet, basically, and go haywire. So it's a hard situation. So, and that's in severe cases, mind you, as well. So, and now, patients with necrotizing fasciitis who do not receive surgical debridement promptly have a very high mortality rate. A study from 2014 suggests that Vibrio vulnificus is fatal in nearly 1 in 5 people infected in the U.S. Earlier studies put that mortality rate higher than 50%. People with underlying illness like liver disease and people over the age of 40 may be more likely to have a serious complication. Also, those with like diabetes, anyone who has trouble with healing, especially like wound healing and things like that. Surviving patients often require major amputations, like we mentioned, to keep that infection from spreading or becoming septic if they can. Now, to help prevent vibriosis, avoid eating raw or undercooked shellfish, such as oysters. People with a weakened immune system or liver disease are at increased risk. People with a wound, such as a scrape, cut, recent piercing, even tattoo, should avoid exposing it to warm seawater in these coastal environments, and apparently also getting on any MacGyver-esque zip line. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
An improvised traversal
because
device,
even brackish water, I mean, there's bacteria in fresh water too, but this particular nasty is in the seawater and in brackish waters. But yeah,
Mhm.
avoid that. Also, if you have to,
Don't do that.
If if you're working in these environments, you need to cover that wound with waterproof bandages. Just find a way to not have a way for it to get introduced into your body. Wear gloves when handling raw shellfish, because even touching shellfish that are contaminated to a cut or a wound can cause this too. It's not.
Wait a minute. That just made me think. The guy that we showed who was in South Jersey, do you think it was the crabs themselves or was it in the water?
Could have been either. Oysters is
Okay.
usually
Huh.
the culprit, but I mean, it's in the water.
Mhm.
If it's in the water, then other shellfish can be affected too. So, and if it's raw, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we typically hear about it in oysters because people eat raw oysters.
Yeah, I have family who love raw oysters, and the last time they did it, they got sick as a dog. And I'm so worried that they're going to do that again.
Yeah.
Makes me want to send them a text right now. Hey, you need to stop that.
And while you should wear gloves when you handle it, wash your hands with soap and water when finished. Now, I will say most places get oysters these days that are farmed in controlled environments. So if you know where your seafood is from, that is helpful, I guess. I mean, that doesn't mean there can't be outbreaks there too, but it's good to know where maybe a restaurant is getting their seafood or where your grocery store might be getting their seafood as well. There is this old rule called the R months rule, at least over here in this neck of the woods, that says that you should only eat raw oysters between September to April, like with any month with an R in it, I guess. This may make some sense just because the temperature thing. I mean, the bacteria likes warmer environments, but with increased safety,
Wow.
like in food handling, some say this isn't necessary, but you do you. Most places, like I said, they get their oysters from these controlled environments, but also with climate change, the whole month thing may not matter anyway, because if you're, I mean, it gets warm here in February sometimes. So it's like, it depends on where you live. If that, month sort of myth is going to be of use to you. Because yeah, now, because I mean, May doesn't have an R in it. It's hot now. April though has an R, and it's pretty hot here in April, actually. It's in the 80s by then. So
yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised this year. It's the 10th of May, and today's weather is very mild. The real Georgia heat has not shown up yet.
We just had that double low thing come through. So low pressure thing come through. So that's part of that, I think. Now, symptoms of septicemia, and this usually carries a mortality rate of over 50%. Septicemia is basically when the infection has gotten into your bloodstream and it is spread through your body. You're basically, your whole body is infected if you're septic. And you can survive being septic. I mean, but the mortality rate is pretty up there.
It's a flip of the coin.
It's not good. But symptoms.
Oh, speaking of, forgive me for interrupting. I was in the drive-thru getting dinner. What was that yesterday evening? Yeah. The cashier, she sees me in my scrubs. I'm in my car because I do home health care and I drive to patients' houses. I'm wearing scrubs and I have my ID badge on. She looks at me and goes, "Oh, since you're a doctor, can I ask you about," and she launches into this long story about an abscess that she had. I eventually figured out it was inside her mouth. And it was infected. She knew it was. And she said, "But I got some antibiotics." And then it went away. And I was like, "Okay." I said, "So you've been to the doctor to have this seen?" She was like, "Well," I'm like, "That's a no."
Well,
so I don't know where she got the antibiotics.
Well,
I did not get that far.
It's a problem
And so,
because there are people who share their antibiotics thinking they're doing good, but in reality, you could be building antibiotic resistant bacteria in that
yes.
person.
So that's right. And I finally figured, and then she said, and then that tooth finally fell out. I was like, oh, I said, honey, you need to get to a dentist
Yeah.
as soon as possible.
And
have to.
that can be easier said than done because it's so expensive. That might be the reason why she hasn't gone yet.
That's exactly what it is.
Expensive.
She has children at home, and she's working this job with an hourly wage. I'm pretty sure they don't have, health insurance for, the hourly employees at a fast food restaurant. And, it was a classic case of access to healthcare, but I warned her like sternly. I was like, sweetheart, if an infection goes unchecked, it will turn into sepsis and it can kill you. You have to get seen, whether it's a primary doctor or a dentist. The infection cannot be allowed to fester.
Well, and like depending on the bacteria too, it can travel to different parts of your body. I know, like we're going to talk about strep in the future because people think of strep and they're like, oh, little strep throat. No, strep can ruin you. Strep can travel to your heart. It can mess with your heart valves. Can mess with your kidneys, lots of things. So you definitely have to.
As soon as strep gets into your body, it's looking for your cardiac valves.
So
just know that.
It needs to be taken care of promptly. Anything to do with your mouth too can affect your heart because not flossing is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So there's that.
Shut up. I didn't know that.
Floss.
Wow. That makes me even more glad that I floss.
Flossing's important. It's a pain, don't get me wrong, but it's important.
Yeah. Well, the thing that changed the game for me as far as flossing goes, if anybody cares to hear, I got the little flossing tools. That makes it so much easier than using the traditional floss out of the little box, I mean, I've been flossing every night ever since I started getting those.
Yeah, they sell those at Costco too in like big old bags now. So
yes, that's what I have. Yeah, but just to tie off that point, this is why I advocate for maximal access to healthcare because it's just that poor girl. She saw me and she took the opportunity to tell me the whole story because she doesn't know when she's going to get the chance to tell any medical personnel about what's going on with her. And I'm over here like, sweetie, you're sick.
You see people too that they'll be on TikTok describing symptoms and hoping that a doctor will get to them. And then like the comments that were like, go see a doctor. I'm like, okay, not everybody unfortunately can afford to do that. And it sucks.
That's why they made a TikTok.
And it sucks. But you should go see a doctor, but because of how difficult it is for some people to be able to pay for a doctor's visit and eat in the same month, then,
Yeah. And then if somebody who's sick makes a TikTok, 9 times out of 10, people are like, what's your Cash App? Or what's your Venmo? We're sending you to the doctor. You're sick. This is ridiculous.
And it's sad that we have to do that, but it's become a system of taking care of each other when we can.
I mean,
because the dentist costs more. The dentist can cost a lot of money too, because a lot of insurance companies, you have to have like separate insurance for dentistry, I think. Like a lot of times they work with the insurance you have, but it's like a separate branch of it. It gets complicated really easy. So, but anyway, it's no good. Septicemia, not good. So, but this is, in terms of with Vibrio, this has mostly been found in or described mostly in Florida and Japan amongst those who ate these raw filter feeding type shellfish, typically when the seawater temperatures are greater than 20 degrees Celsius. So, So I repeat, do not go into the ocean with a wound. Grandma's old tale of salt will heal it is a dirty, rotten lie.
No, ma'am. There are so many varieties of bacteria and stuff that are just fine in salt water. They're totally fine. If you have
a sore throat, salt water like that you can make at home is not the same as getting a mouthful of salt water, because there's just so much in it. So like it's not.
Yeah, it ain't table salt in the ocean.
So I know,
y'all.
like they say, well, you have a sore throat, you could gargle some salt water. I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to scoop it up out of the ocean, right? So
No.
you just got to be careful with that kind of stuff. But also it's going to hurt, and also sharks. Anyway, while we're on Vibrio, though, cholera is actually caused by Vibrio cholerae. So it is a form of Vibrio, which is kind of funny.
Oh.
But unlike its cousin, it's transmitted
Okay.
via fecal, oral, root, and water, or contaminated seafood, similar to the other bacteria we discussed earlier. Now, the classic symptom for this is large amounts of watery diarrhea. They can last anywhere from like a few days to longer than this. Vomiting and muscle cramps can also occur. Like I said, this illness can range from mild to severe. Like you may be thinking of, a stomach bug, like we talked about earlier with Norovirus or whatever, but this illness has killed millions of people throughout history. And I think I have a picture of the woman who looks perfectly fine. And then, yeah, that's cholera.
Yes. Let me pull that up for us. It's a little unsettling.
Yeah, I actually have.
There you are.
I actually have I've wait for it to come up. Yeah, I actually have a book with her on it. This book's called The Sick Rose. It's good. It's Disease and the Art of Medical Illustration. If you like seeing medical illustrations of disease, it is a good resource. I will say it is graphic. And they're drawings, but there are, parts of the body that are affected by some of these. So it is not a book for children. But it does have some graphic, scary drawings as well when it comes to some of these illnesses, because especially back in the day when there weren't really many good treatments at all for these sort of things. But yeah, it's got some pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, this lady here, this is a drawing of a woman who had cholera. This is probably about 19th century. It was pretty big deal back then too. Not that it doesn't still happen today, but you can see on the left, she looks like a normal, happy young woman. That was before she was sick, and this other image of her was supposed to be drawn around 4 days before her death. So, but yeah, you could
Wow.
you could leave that up for a second, because when I describe some of the symptoms, you might notice that with her, because it can be pretty striking physically as well. Now, some other people killed that are pretty notable. Tchaikovsky, the composer, Piotr Tchaikovsky. Charles the 10th of France, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, whatever. He was racist, by the way, so I could get his name wrong. I could honestly, he was a philosopher. I could list a whole bunch of philosophers and their problems for a future bonus episode if y'all want, because
Sure.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry, I'll get off of it for now. A couple of U.S. presidents. James Polk, who was like our 11th president, he was pro-slavery, so I mean, also a racist, I guess. Likely Zachary Taylor, he was our 12th president, so like back to back. And just to stay consistent, this one also had slaves, but he was against the practice of expanding slavery. So I figured if I called Hegel, whatever, a racist, I couldn't not mention them. But
Sure.
now, Zachary Taylor is an interesting case because people knew that he had a stomach illness after eating cherries and milk. I'm not sure if this was like his favorite snack, but it's also important to remember that at the time that he was drinking said milk, it was not pasteurized. So
right.
I don't know if it was the milk or if it was the water, but we believe he now died of cholera as well. So cholera has been and still is deadly. Diarrhea can be so severe that it leads within hours to severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. So this can result in sunken eyes, cold skin, decreased skin elasticity, wrinkling of the hands and feet. It can cause the skin to turn a bluish color, like in this picture you see of this woman here. Symptoms can start 2 hours to 5 days after exposure. Now, the reason for so many cholera deaths in the past, and it is still a problem in many countries without clean water, is because it took a while to figure out where it was coming from. And, the drinking water without treatment and such was just sewage ridden. Now, the first discoverer was Italian physician Filippo Pacini in 1854, but this was not widespread information when he discovered it. The bacteria was isolated by others in Spain and Portugal as well at this time, but it was German physician Robert Koch, who we've talked about before, in 1883, who was able to use a microscope to see and declare it as the causative agent of cholera. So a Bengali scientist named Hemendra Nath Chatterjee, I am so sorry if I got that wrong. Feel free to correct me if y'all know how to say that name and I said it wrong, was the first to suggest stopping nausea with promethazine, this is Finnegan, rehydrating as a treatment in his 1953 paper in The Lancet, along with his rehydration technique there as well. So that's pretty cool. The study of cholera in England by John Snow between 1849 and 1854 led to significant advances in the field of epidemiology because of his insights about transmission via contaminated water and a map that he basically produced of basically the first recorded, could be basically seen as the first recorded incidents of epidemiological tracking. Does that make sense? We've mentioned this guy before. He's the guy that discovered that contaminated water was the key source of the cholera epidemics in 19th century England. He basically investigated this epidemic in the Soho district of London and was able to conclude that contaminated water from the Broad Street pump was the source of the cholera outbreaks there. This led to the removal of the handle, which in turn led to the end of that particular epidemic. So kind of proved that, this is what's causing it. He also studied cholera in London homes that were receiving water from 2 water supply systems, one from the sewage contaminated portion of the Thames and the other that drew its water upstream from a more uncontaminated part of the river. So the Thames was just riddled with sewage and waste, and people were getting their water from here. And this is a time where people are still like, humors, right? This like germ theory was still kind of gaining momentum at this point. So, but yeah. So pretty cool to be able to be like, it's the water that's causing all this sickness. Let's figure this out. So this led to the understanding that sanitation needed to be the goal to end these outbreaks. Now, outbreaks can occur following disasters even today as well. After the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, that was pretty bad. I don't know if you remember that. It was, they've had earthquakes and disasters before, but this was a pretty, this is bad. Cholera became another problem alongside the devastation and resulted in many thousands of cases and deaths. So every year, an estimated 1.3 to 4 million people around the world get cholera. I know that sounds like this is old school stuff. Why are we still getting cholera? And between 21,000 to 143,000 people die every year. Most outbreaks these days occur in South and Southeast Asia, various parts of Africa, parts of Central and South America, and in the Caribbean, as well as in the Middle East. And it's due to the lack of clean water, the unsanitary conditions, and crowded living spaces found in some of these areas. We talk about access to healthcare. These people don't even have access to clean water, much less healthcare. But countries with the most cases currently include Angola, Sudan, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe. There is now an oral vaccine that can give some protection for up to 6 months. It's not perfect, but it's something. Those who do survive this illness can carry immunity for about 3 years, so you can have it again. It's not lifelong immunity or anything. And there is currently a global task force on cholera control that's trying to eliminate cholera in as many as 20 countries and to reduce deaths by 90% by 2030. So much luck to them on that. Don't have much time left on that timeline, but
see, where are all the billionaires on those efforts? Like, can't they just cut a check and fix some
I think
stuff?
they're just hoping you forget
You know what I
it
mean? Like,
exists.
yeah. Like, instead of going to space, like, how about get rid of cholera?
Oh, there's plenty of things you can get rid of, really, or try to spend your money to get
Sure.
rid of. But yeah.
Yeah.
Tuberculosis. There are people who can't get
Yes.
medications for tuberculosis. We have medication that could treat people, but it's,
I heard a guy on TikTok probably a year or so ago. He made a whole post about how there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. And that stuck with me. Because rarely are they ethical people. They become billionaires, and then that's kind of the end of their legacy.
What all comes down to.
I know Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has made a lot of efforts internationally I know they made a big effort against malaria, but
Well,
as much money as they have, there should be more problems solved.
If you are incredibly generous, I don't know that you can also be a billionaire because you're that generous.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Can't,
So, so there's this goal. Much luck to them. But yeah, it should be known that countries that do have sanitation measures in place and have the means for clean water and other such privileges are still not immune from outbreaks. While it's rare in the U.S., for instance, I think the last outbreak of cholera occurred in early 1900s in New York. A loss of our sanitation systems or standards could easily make us vulnerable. So I'm just going to leave that there.
Yes.
All right. Naegleria fowleri.
What did you call me?
Brain-eating amoeba.
Can I put the picture on screen?
Sure.
It's so unsettling. Prepare yourselves.
This is one of my greatest fears. Just gonna admit to that.
I'm sorry. It looks so absurd. It looks like yet another reason people should hate clowns, is what it looks like.
Those are its little suckers there. We'll go over those in a minute. It's an amoeba, okay? Like there are other amoebas found in the water that can cause illness, like Entamoeba histolytica. It can cause GI issues, but this one is almost always deadly. I was only able to find like 9 documented cases of survival of this particular horror, and many of them needed extensive physical and occupational therapy to just walk again, get back to normal, basically learn how to be human again. Now, an amoeba is basically a unicellular organism. It has these pseudopods that can kind of move to change shape, so it can, anyway. But they may be parasitic or live freely in freshwater environments. They're kind of weird in general, but Naegleria fowleri is creepy and deadly, as I mentioned. This amoeba was first discovered by medical scientists in South Australia in the 1960s, following several mysterious deaths from an unusual form of meningitis in the 1950s, because that's what this looks like when you're infected. This little guy lives in warmer lakes, ponds, rivers, hot springs, usually near the sediment, but not always, because, things can get stirred up. They love the heat, and infections usually occur in the summer months, more so during heat wave years as well. Now, I've seen cases in which people were infected also by using tap water for like nasal rinses, and studies proving that the little jerk can also be found in pools not being maintained. So usually like abandoned pools, or, I think we've all seen a pool that's just sitting there, just being rained in, and don't ever jump in those. Please don't do that. No, don't do that. Chlorine and like boiling for at least a minute both of these measures can kill the amoeba. So if a pool is adequately maintained, you're fine, right? Just don't jump into abandoned or old pools. That's gross anyway. Now, these amoebas are common, but normally feed on bacteria in their typical environment. The danger arises when a person jumps or dives into these bodies of water and that amoeba gets up the nose. You won't see it, obviously, or feel it until it's feasting and releasing toxins in your brain. But it moves up the nasal cavity to the brain, and infects the tissue there, causing the infection, primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, or you could just say PAM, PAM. Sorry to all my PAMs out there.
We do apologize for
While
that.
thankfully rare, most people who have this will die. They have 3 forms, 3 to 4 forms, really. Some said 3, some said 4, whatever. But including the form that has this creepy mouth-shaped suction cups that you see right here. It looks like it has eyes and a mouth. The one on the left, the one on
It
the left
does.
looks
It
like
looks
a
like a
nose
face,
too.
and one of them smiling, and that's unsettling.
It likes your brain. I hate these things. I hate them so much. Anyway, so yeah, there are some medications that have shown promise, and I'll come back to that in just a second. But typically, fewer than 10 people a year in the U.S. will get this disease, this meningoencephalitis from this particular nasty. But nearly everyone who gets it does die from it. So between 1962 and 2023, there were 164 reported cases of it in the U.S. Only 4 from that bunch have survived. Now, when this beastie gets into your nose, it can travel up through the cribriform plate, which is this like thin sort of bony plate that separates the nasal cavities from your brain. And it just rides along the olfactory nerve up that way, travels to the brain. It begins immediately to multiply and destroy brain tissue through physical means, literally eating the tissue with these little suction cup sucker things, as well as through the release of cytolytic molecules, which is specifically proteases. So it's destroying proteins and stuff, destroying cells.
And just in case anybody's not familiar with medical terminology, cytolytic, if you cut that word in half, the cyto part refers to cells, and then the lytic part refers to the division of or the destruction of. So it's basically destroying cells.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So he's eating your brain. Nom, 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 nom. Okay. This is much cuter than the brain-eating amoeba, but just for visual comparison, just nom, nom, nom. Okay. So,
oh man, that was so good. Please keep that near you from here on out.
I've used it before, and you probably haven't even
noticed. That was a wonderful
noticed.
piece of. I guess I haven't. That was amazing.
So now the immune system does respond, sending neutrophils and macrophages. Remember, we talked about macrophages, whatever. Yeah, these are those cells that like to and just take in microbes and destroy them, which is great usually, right? But so they send these cells to fight this thing off. But this just results in swelling in this case and inflammation in the brain. So it just causes further damage, essentially. It can then change, but these little critters can change themselves into these round, hardened cysts that white blood cells can't permeate. So you're just, instead of actually destroying these things. Now, there have been people who have gotten over this naturally. It is incredibly rare, like 1 or 2 people. Okay. But typically, instead of helping, the immune system ends up adding to the inflammation. So now symptoms may start out the same as those with viral meningitis. So you may have a bad headache, fever, stiff neck, blurred vision, loss of balance and coordination, loss of appetite, vomiting, altered mental status, sometimes hallucinations as well, seizures, and coma. Such symptoms usually start around 2 to 15 days after the critter has made its way up the nose. And once symptoms do start, death typically occurs within 3 to 7 days. Usually on average about 5 days. Now, infection usually occurs in those 13 and younger and is seen more in males. Now, this may simply be because this is the age you typically go out and jump and play in water like this. There have been some older teens as well as adults that have dealt with this as well. But typically you see this age group going out having fun, jumping in rivers and, that kind of thing. Lakes, Yeah, so testing for this involves looking at samples of cerebral spinal fluid, biopsies, looking at tissues. I mentioned tap water earlier. There have been a few cases in which patients have used tap water in like a neti pot sort of thing. Do you know what that is? It's like a sinus rinser.
Yes.
And you should never use tap water in it. You're not supposed to use tap water in it. You're supposed to use either sterile or distilled water, that kind of thing. But this happened when they used tap water to flush their sinuses. They were infected in this way. So don't do that. Prevention requires not doing that, but also not diving or jumping in warm freshwater areas without plugging your nose. They do have, plug your nose, that kind of thing, to keep anything from going up it. Again, this includes lakes, rivers, creeks, ponds, etc. Also plug the nose when doing such activities as swimming underwater in these areas, water skiing or slides where there is a possibility of water getting up your nose. Don't stir up the sediment around you when you're swimming. It's more prevalent in the summer and in the south here where it's warmer. You essentially do not want this water going up your nose at all. That's the main takeaway here. Drinking it will not cause this illness. Your stomach acids will just destroy this little guy, but you can
that
drink
is
it
interesting
and it won't
right there.
hurt you. I don't think you should drink it because there's probably other stuff in the water that will cause diarrhea, which you don't want.
Let's not test fate.
But you don't want one of those illnesses either. But it's not from drinking it; it's from it getting up your nose and getting into your brain. There was a very close. There was a case very close to us in 2023 of a 17-year-old girl who died after being infected with the amoeba while swimming in the lake. She died within days of symptoms. It was very sad.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up right here.
Yeah. That was, just a few years ago.
Yeah, this is August of 2023. The article does not clearly state where she was swimming, but it was the result of swimming. McDuffie County
She was in the lake,
I think, yes, they have a parts of McDuffie County have lakefront shoreline and easy access to the Clarks Hill Lake. Yeah, she was 18 years old. She was about to graduate high school. It was extremely sad. And just like you said, that average of like 5 days ish. I think for her it was like 4 days.
Yeah, she died within days of having symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, by the
It was around her
time
birthday because she was 17 in this article I looked at, but she could have been like on the verge of becoming 18. Yeah.
Yeah, they talked with this is from Dr. Ingrid Camello at Augusta University Medical Center or Medical School. You get submerged in the water when you swim or do diving or swimming underwater in the pond or the lake. That's how the amoeba gets into your nostrils. She says it's typically a problem in the South where temperatures are warmer. There's a 90% death rate, only a handful of people in the country surviving. And she's not seen the infection in more than 20 years.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, thankfully.
So she is a pediatric, it says here, associate professor of pediatrics and infectious diseases. And she's gone 20 years without seeing it. So it's, I mean.
The little critter, there's plenty of them. They're very common. It's just once it gets up your nose. So that's the part that becomes.
Right. That's the key. Now, speaking of those who have survived it, there is a man who survived it, who is from the exact same town.
All right, what's his name?
Let's see. It's been almost 3 months since Thompson High student Megan Ebenroth died. Ebenroth's story brought back memories for the Hare family, who faced the same diagnosis decades ago in the same town, but their son Jamie survived. So this is Jamie Hare. He was a child back in the 80s when he got the exact same illness. It was in the 1980s. Articles show there had only been one survivor so far. According to the CDC, there had only been 3 more since. But it is like almost statistically impossible for there to have been 2 cases of the same brain-eating amoeba. I'm getting balloons.
Why are you getting balloons?
I don't know what that means.
That was weird.
I think it's my gestures. Hang on. It's on my
Hey, I want
it's my
gestures.
gestures.
I don't have gestures.
I know. I got to turn them on your phone.
I want gestures.
Sorry, they're fun to play with. Anyways, yeah, statistically speaking, this is impossible.
Well,
First of all, for it to happen twice in the same, the exact same town, and also for one of them to have survived.
nothing is impossible.
So,
now, Master.
and this gentleman recovered. He recovered as a child. He graduated high school, and he also went to Bible college. But he's a functional adult. I don't believe he's living on his own. But yeah, he did survive.
Well, yeah, they so there's literally only a handful of survivors out there, but unfortunately she did not make it through that. But there are, I believe, 4 survivors living in America. One spent a year in the hospital, actually, a whole year, and was left mostly paralyzed after. I think he was from Florida. There was one in, am I saying this right? Kerala, India.
Yes, South India.
Because I know one time I said it wrong. Kerala, India. So one that has survived there, one in Pakistan, one from Mexico, and at least one in Australia. I'm not sure where the 9th was, but one of these actually was from Arkansas, Kaylee Hardig. She became infected in 2013 when she was 12 years old after going with friends to this man-made water park at this pond. So, yeah, she was taken to the hospital after quickly developing symptoms such as bad headache, high fever, lethargy. There she was diagnosed, and it turned out that she was not the first to be infected with this amoeba, resulting in meningoencephalitis in this area either. In Arkansas, the same pond, actually. Wow. A 7-year-old boy who had been swimming in that same water park had been infected and died just a few years before. But the family never made it public, apparently, before this. Wow. So, statistically or not, don't get water up your nose, because just because, it's not going to happen to me, just don't get water up your nose. Just don't do it. Just try to plug your nose if you're going to do all that stuff. Don't jump in nasty water either. So the same week that Callie fell ill, the CDC's Free Living Amoeba Laboratory in Atlanta, there's one of those, received a drug called miltefosine. This drug is actually made in Germany, and it was not distributed in the U.S. at the time. She actually was very fortunate in the timing of her illness, because it's complicated. This drug was originally developed to treat breast cancer a long time ago. Despite some promising evidence, there simply wasn't enough data to approve its off-label treatment of parasitic meningitis before this. So before 2013, according to one doctor, Dr. Michael Beach, kind of funny, makes me think of Ken. What am I good at? Beach. He's actually a CDC epidemiologist who oversees the Amoeba Laboratory, which is fascinating. This agency had never been able to fly this drug in fast enough from Europe to even save people, really, because if they didn't make it here, and you had to get special permission before 2013. The CDC had to obtain special approval to keep miltefosine within its borders. So that was around that time that happened. So doctors had to get special permission to request the drug. So it could take a few days to be flown to the hospital when needed. As you know, though, this progresses pretty quickly. You may not have a few days. So it's also been approved for leishmaniasis infections. This is another parasitic infection. We'll go over that one in a future episode. But, so in 2013, the CDC was able to keep it to provide to hospitals as needed. Still would have to fly it out to that particular hospital at this time. A single course of treatment can start at $48,000 here in the U.S.
Yeah, $40,000.
$48,000. A single course.
48 grand, excuse me.
Single course.
That's too expensive.
Yeah, so hospitals would not even keep it in stock on site because it was deemed too costly when the disease was not so common. It would have been basically driven or
Yeah.
flown from the CDC Atlanta office, but this takes hours, at least sometimes days. The
Right.
medication needs to be given immediately to work if it's going to. It may not even work, but
Yeah. Them saying,
you know.
yeah, them saying they can't keep it on, they were probably talking to a hospital administrator.
Well,
that sounds like hospital administrator talk.
yeah, well, see, like the pharmaceutical company keeps it at a very high price partially because they're the only ones that make it. There is no competition with them. So if you have there's no like generic form. You have no one else making this, because the thing is, why would someone go to the effort of making this drug they're not going to have a profit in, right?
Exactly.
And so, as messed up as that sounds, that's how they're thinking. So, yeah. This means basically if you or a loved one needs it, it's not there at all places. And it's
That's
because
right.
of money. So,
yes. Welcome to
sucks.
America.
Now, the reason why it's so expensive,
Mhm.
like I said, it's due to shortages, pharmaceutical companies considering the need to be limited. So you only have this one company making this particular drug. It's so expensive I can't say it. Miltefosine, miltefosine for those infected by the brain-eating amoeba. Like Profunda, the manufacturer of this drug, has introduced a program where they stock it in hospitals for free and only charge it if used. So as of 2016, they have stocked 8 hospitals in Texas, Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. But that's it, as far as I know. And we're just pretty sure this drug is what helps, because we don't have much study on it for this diagnosis. Because the diagnosis is rare, and like when death is imminent, anything needs to be tried, So it seems to have saved lives so far, while not being perfect. I mean, there are people who have had it and still died, but it does need to be administered as soon as possible in order to work. And like when I heard like, oh, they're going to give it to hospitals for free and only charge for when it's used, right? And like the first thing that popped into my head was that scene in Good Omens where Crowley, they're standing before like the ark or whatever that's being built. And Crowley, like he's responding to something that Aziraphale says, and he's like, how kind, like he's, being facetious. And that's all I can like think of when I read this. Oh, how kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're going to, you might live, but you're probably going to go into like just complete medical debt by the end of it. So, but yeah, brain eating amoebas. They're terrible. And they're one of my biggest fears, even though they're rare. Plug your noses, everyone. Don't jump in the lake. Yeah, that's what I have for you on Swimmers Beware Part 2.
Fantastic. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. Please feel free to leave us comments, ask questions, content suggestions, etc., and we will try to follow up on all that. And we will see you in the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.